All right, in today's episode, we're going to talk about common buyer and seller objections. What are people going to say to you when you call them, and how do we handle it? Stay tuned. Welcome to the Agent Bridge Podcast, guys. Episode 24. We're going to talk about common buyer and seller objections. But before we do that, we're going to do our weekly market update, or just talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Yeah.
So, okay. So first, give me an idea on where we are on rates, market conditions, things like that.
Rates are pretty flat so far this week. I think everybody's waiting for the data to come out Wednesday, the consumer pricing index data.
Yeah.
And I think we'll see some fluctuation from there. I don't know if it's up or down. It's going to depend on the data. But it's been pretty flat this week. Not a lot of changing.
Well, you'll know when you're listening to this podcast. We don't know yet, but when you're listening to this podcast, the data will have come out, and we'll probably update you on that next week. But yeah, it's been kind of flat. We're still seeing good movement in the real estate marketplace. We're still seeing multiple offers. We're seeing some leveling out for sure, and kind of the just mentality of people. It's like, hey, look, nothing's changing anytime quickly. So if you need to make a move, you got to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, really, in all price points. My wife put a property under contract this weekend in that $600,000-$700,000 price point, and
nice.
It's there was, I think, 6 offers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
is this in Franklin?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, that's great.
2 days on market. So I mean, it's still moving if it's priced appropriately.
Yeah, if it's priced appropriately. The other thing that I feel like we need to talk about is this whole class action lawsuit with NAR. So the National Association of Realtors. If you don't know what NAR is, National Association of Realtors, there's a class action lawsuit. I don't remember who's filing this lawsuit. It's just a group of buyers, right? So it's just a ton of people, or sellers rather, that are suing for them having to pay the buyer's agent commission. And so there's some confusion around that. There's a lot of talk around, hey, is the buyer's agent going away? What should I do? How do we handle this? Is the real estate world as we know it falling apart? And so I just want to talk about that for a minute, what my thoughts on it are, what your thoughts on it. And also, I will tell you, we're not lawyers. We don't know anything about, I've been through some legal things in my
just played
career.
One on TV.
Yeah. That's right. I just played one on TV. So yeah, I'm just a dude who's been in real estate a long time. And the thing that's interesting about it to me is the thing that they are suing for is something that I never really understood, or something that I never thought that was how it happened. So they're saying, well, the seller's paying the buyer's agent commissions. Well, no. As a matter of fact, if you go back long enough, all right, the listing agent was the only agent involved in the sale of a transaction. So the 6% commission, if there was a 6% commission that the listing agent was taking, they got all of it, right? And a buyer would come to the table, they would see that listing, and then that realtor would work the deal. Over time, that was adapted. So basically, the listing agent got the commission, but they would offer half of that commission to a buyer's agent. So they would share a cooperative compensation with the buyer's agent, which led to clients having better representation.
Yep.
They've got representation from an agent that's working on behalf of them. So I think it's probably a really good scenario, but
yeah, you move
somehow,
away. You move away from like facilitation,
right,
to now you have representation on both sides that have your best interests in mind.
Yeah. Well, somehow it all got kind of twisted up, and even realtors would say, well, you got to pay the buyer's agent, and that's not really how it works, right? So the listing agent secures the commission, right, and then they offer 3% to a buyer's agent. But there's a lot of stuff that got wrapped up in that, and so we'll see what happens. I think most likely it's just going to be maybe alteration of contracts or disclosures or things like that. I don't think the nature of real estate is going to change, but I could be completely wrong. Regardless, as a real estate agent, you need to be focused on listing houses anyway.
Turns into multiple deals.
That's another sort of like anti where I kind of am against a lot of the real estate talk about, buyer's agents versus seller's agents. There's people saying like, well, I'm just a buyer's agent or I'm just a listing agent. I've never thought that somebody should just be either or.
No.
The transaction isn't complicated enough for you to specialize in one or the other. It's like, no. As a real estate agent, you should be able to become an expert at the process of listing, marketing, selling a home, bringing a buyer to the transaction. There's not enough there for me, in my mind, for you to specialize in one or the other.
No. And honestly, if you're a listing agent, you're going to get buyers out of that listing if they're staying in town, obviously. So, learn how to work both sides. I mean, maybe you want to hand those off, but I don't know why you would.
Yeah. We might lose some subscribers over that. Just because that's against what most people say in the real estate zone. Sorry. Whoops. We just got over 100 subscribers, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose any. Anyway, but it's worth thinking about, guys, that you really, I don't think you need to specialize in one or the other. Go ahead and learn how to do all parts of the transaction. And as a experienced real estate agent, you should. All right, let's jump into the content here, common buyer and seller objections and how to handle them. So one of the things that I do want to say, a lot of times we're talking about like 5 steps or 6 steps or something like that. This is going to be a lot more conversational in terms of, hey, these are some experiences that we've had and our best practice in sort of handling objections. So it's not going to be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be a lot more conversational. But hang in, because I think what you're going to get from this is, as we get into this, you're going to get some really good ideas on how to handle them, right, and not get stumped when you're in the conversation with the buyer or seller. And this came from, a real estate agent that reached out to us, just kind of hitting a couple of walls with clients in conversation over the phone. And so we wanted to say, hey, look, that's if you're going to be doing prospecting like you should, you're going to run into this stuff.
Yeah, you showed up here without a topic, and she made the phone call, and so we basically took that phone call, and here's the podcast.
Yeah, that's real talk. Sometimes we know exactly what we're going to talk about, and sometimes we're like, man, I don't know. But today we were able to pull one out, I guess. All right, so the first thing, but before we get into the objections, there's a few like principles that you need to understand. No matter how good you get at handling objections, you're not going to win everybody. This is a numbers game. So you have to do the reps. You've got to do enough calls. Now, you can improve ratios of those calls, right? I can maybe improve from like, hey, I got 3 out of 10 or 3 appointments out of 10 calls. I can get to 4 appointments or 5 appointments or 6 appointments out of 10 calls. But you still got to make the 10 calls.
Yeah, it's all percentages. You're working the percentages.
Right. So you want to do these things in order to improve their ratios, but you cannot change the idea that you need to make enough calls so that you can have a group of data that you can kind of see where your ratios are. And that's going to help you understand your business. Okay, so that's first.
One other thing there, these early phone calls too are going to teach you how to handle future calls.
Yeah.
You're going to hear the objections in the first few calls. You're not going to handle them probably the best way you should, or maybe how you should, but you'll get better, and the future calls are going to get more and more streamlined, and you'll start to almost be able to anticipate what someone else on the other line is going to say.
Yeah, Darren Hardy has that principle. He's like, you get out there and you fail as much as you can. You push towards failure, right? It's kind of like, there's a book I think called Go for the No. Because if you go for enough no's, you're eventually going to get a yes. Now, I have a little bit of pushback on that, because I think you ought to be like not just beating your head up against a wall, just not picking up the phone and be like, hey, do you want to sell a house? And then hanging up. I mean, you need to have some skill built up, but ultimately it's a numbers game. The other principle, second principle, be agreeable and give options. So when you're on the phone with someone, they're not themselves. The person on the other end, like I was talking to this agent before, I'm not nice Brandon with a salesperson on the other end of that call. No. If someone is cold calling me, I hate them, right? I'm like, I do not like you. I don't even know why I picked up the phone, other than I'm in a bad mood. I want to gripe at somebody, right? Maybe.
Yep.
Maybe I'm revealing too much. But sometimes like I'm not myself. I should be nicer, but I'm not. I'm like, what do you got? What are you selling? Right? Or you're skeptical or you're suspicious. So you have to know that as a salesperson going in or as a realtor making those calls, that person is going to be skeptical, suspicious, cranky, whatever. And it's your job to flip that by not arguing with them, not being agreeable, and giving options. Okay, so, and I think those are just good principles, period. But the goal of the call is to get an appointment, and you're not going to get an appointment if you start to take a argumentative approach or a combative approach in your call. So you don't want to try to convince anybody.
Yeah, you will never get an appointment if you enter that call with the same attitude that someone on the other line has, if they're being combative. It just doesn't work.
Right. So you to win a client, you have to build rapport and trust, and you're not going to build true rapport and trust over the phone. You're going to have to get in front of them. Now, there are really talented inside sales agents that, yes, I'll make that caveat. They can build rapport. It's possible to build rapport and trust. You're more likely to build rapport and trust in person, and your ratios are going to be much better if you're moving towards an appointment. So yes, it is possible to build a rapport and trust, but as a real estate agent, your job is to get in front of that client as quickly, or potential client as quickly as possible, so that they can get to know you as a human being and not just a voice on the other side of the phone.
That's right.
So push towards the appointment. The goal of the phone call is to get the appointment. Sometimes you get people who are, they like get on the phone with you and they know your game, right? They're like, I know what you're trying to do here. I was a realtor once, so on and so forth, right? So somebody who's knows your game. And so that can cause for you maybe some frustration. But again, one of the things I say to agents all the time, this is a chess game, not a checkers game. You're trying to create a desired outcome for yourself. So there's a couple of ways that you do that. One of them is by being deferential to that person who knows your game. Like, I think the question that they asked this particular agent was, do you even know the area? Right? Which is a very combative question. Like, it's trying to trap you. And so my response, I said, what you want to say in that scenario is, probably not as good as you do. Obviously, you know the area better than anyone. You've lived there, you've worked there, you've, lived your life there. I'd love to learn more about it from you. Right. So that's a way to maybe, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, just be deferential and kind of, do a little jujitsu there.
Yeah. Ultimately, the goal is obviously to get the listing, but you want that part of it to be their idea. To be, they need to come to you and say, hey, you know what? Why don't you just list it for me? And the way you do that is to build this rapport and trust, and to make them believe that you know enough to put this in your hands. So to come at it as, you know a lot about the area, teach me about the area, and start to come at it from a perspective of, you are only in this to learn about every listing on the market in a particular location, and you might have a buyer that's interested, is a way to get that foot in the door.
Right.
For them to say, all right, they are doing their due diligence about my neighborhood.
The other principle, this is my third or fourth principle, I don't know what number we're on. If you can say what they're thinking, you can effectively remove the objection. So I'll give you an example. If someone is being like, do you have a buyer, asking questions like that, and we'll get a little bit more into that later. But if you can kind of say, it's like, hey, I understand that you don't want to waste your time. I understand that you're super busy and I don't want to take any more time than necessary. And you're probably getting bombarded from real estate agents. And, I'm just another real estate agent on the end of the line. But I do want to tell you, basically what you were saying, I do want to tell you that I'm a real estate agent that goes and looks at listings for my clients to determine if they're the right fit for them. So maybe I can just tag on to one of the other showings you have this week, so I'm not taking too much of your time. Right? Again, so what I've done there is I've said what they're thinking is, I don't have time to mess with this and I'm tired of talking to realtors.
Yep.
So I basically have said that, and now I'm sort of taking that objection away. So it's just a little bit of psychology, but it's important. It's important to understand that principle. If you can say what they're thinking, then you remove it. Okay. All right. So let's get into, we're going to talk about seller objections and buyer's objections. Where we are going to encounter these the most in our agent bridge, atmosphere is with for sale by owners and open houses, because that's raw encounters with potential sellers, potential buyers, potential clients. So we like for sale by owners, we like open houses because they have great ratios for conversion, and they're also transactional buyers and sellers. They're people you're going to be people who are ready to buy right now. We talked about this in a previous episode. If you can focus your lead generation efforts on people who are going to convert sooner, then you're going to have better results, right? Once we have those better results and more closings, then we can use the capital, the money, the extra money that you've got from closing deals to reinvest in some different lead sources, right? So some aspirational, some research lead sources, or some marketing, things like that. But when you're at the beginning of your career, you want to focus your energy on high conversion, sort of like low hanging fruit.
Yep.
So we're going to use for sale by owners and open houses as the examples for that seller buyer objection handling. Okay. So with for sale by owners, their number one objection is they don't want to pay the commission, right? They wouldn't be putting their house on the market if they were, why would they spend all that time and energy and effort and, putting it on Zillow and showing it to agents and showing it to buyers, right? They're basically trying to save the money. And if you combat that too early on, you sort of need to feel it out, right? In terms of where they are in the process. Because if they've been on 2 days, you're not probably going to convince them out of the gate.
Yeah. I like to handle that one in person for sure.
Yeah.
And the way I like to handle that one is, do you care more about the commission that you pay or what you net?
Right.
If I was able to net you what you need out of this house, would that be worth an appointment with me? And the answer to that question is always, yes, I care more about what I net.
Right.
If I pay you commission, but I get, more money out of the deal, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I mean, basically, on average, houses that are listed versus for sale by owners are going to sell anywhere from 8 to 13% more. So they're costing themselves more than your commission by not putting it on. Now, those statistics are available, and we can get into those, some other time, like when we get into those real tight specifics or real tight statistics rather. But ultimately, when you're talking to people, you basically, it's in person and you're going, hey, listen, you're going to get more money for this in the long term. Right. The other one, my mom, brother, sister is an agent. What do you do in that situation when they're like, oh, my mom's an agent, she's going to list it for us?
Well, I mean, that one's actually true. Everybody knows an agent. So that one actually is true. Obviously, they're not, they don't know, like, and trust them enough to use them.
Yep.
Or a lot of times we see people don't want to use an agent that they're very close with because they think it's sharing too much information. They know exactly how much money I'm going to get or how much, this or that. So that one is typically like, I'm sure you do know a great agent that you could have a great experience with. I'm really just here to learn more about the market that we're in, to learn more about the houses that are available so that I can show some of my buyers that I have in my pipeline what's available in the marketplace. And that's your foot in the door. And then from there, they'll start to learn pretty quickly that, hey, this person knows what they're talking about. This person could be a decent agent depending on how you handle the conversation. and they'll start to know, like, and trust you. And that might be your opportunity to get the listing from there.
Yeah. Well, what I've found more times than not, when they say my mom, brother, sister is an agent, it's one of two things. Either they were an agent.
Yeah.
They are an inactive agent, or they're a real estate agent in a different state. So they're not like lying, but they're maybe like twisting it because they don't want to engage with you. So in those situations, I say, hey, not a problem. Like, again, if I'm on the phone with them, I'm agreeable. Hey, not a problem that you're going to use them when it's time to sell the house. I want to come by and take a look at it. Let me see if it's going to be a good fit for any of my buyers. But what I've found, the conversation looks like they go, hey, you know what? My sister is an agent, but she's not really doing a lot right now. And we called her, and we think it's probably better to go with someone who's doing this more often. That's happened so many times.
Yeah.
But the name of the game, again, is staying engaged. So again, if I can get the appointment and get in front of them, navigate around that objection and just say, hey, not a problem. I want to come by and take a look, see if it might be a good fit. And, obviously you're going to list with them.
Yeah. Where people mess this one up, I feel like, is they go in for are you offering a buyer's agent commission too soon? This conversation is just about, hey, I want to learn more about the market. I want to learn more about your home. I have a pipeline of buyers and it may be a fit. Mm-hmm. That's all you're talking about over the phone. You're trying to get in the door and just have a conversation with them in person. Don't ask, are you working with buyer's agents? Mm-hmm. That's not the question now. That's the question later.
Right. Well, and then one of the other common objections is, I'm not going to list my house. As a matter of fact, some of the coaches that I have, been around, talked to, and I've often recommended this as well, is on the initial phone call, you're saying like, hey, I'm not calling to list your house. It's like, hey, it's Brandon from 10 Oaks Real Estate. I'm not calling to list your house. I'm calling to learn more about it.
Yeah.
Right. So can you tell me about the house? Is there a way I can come by and take a look at it?
And this even happened in the call we just had before this podcast episode, is agents, when they start to learn the objections, they want to get in a rush. They want to get to the point. They want to get to the point where they're closing. And you just can't move that quickly. Every single objection has to go through the normal cycle before you're in a closure situation.
Right.
So don't get in a rush. Don't get to the point where you feel like you have to close on the phone every time.
I think that is such a great tip, because a lot of agents, again, they're hungry, they're ready to make something happen, and they're pushing too fast. When really it's a lot of it's like a dance, right? You're sort of feeling out where that client is in their process of selling. And then, again, we already know 86% of for sale by owners are going to list anyway.
Yeah.
So it's staying in touch with them over time. So again, the game is getting to meet them in person, establishing that rapport and trust, and then following up with them over time to get that appointment.
That's right.
Okay.
From there, it's staying front of mind, and when they do decide to list, because it's usually when.
Right.
It should be you.
Yeah. So again, I'm not going to list my house. Yep. Not calling to list your house. Just want to see if I can come by and take a look at it.
And by the way, I mean, if you are, following the steps of the Agent Bridge or other, mentoring programs, you do have a pipeline of buyers, and it is good to know the areas that you're working in. Mm-hmm. So there is some value in going to see these homes regardless of the outcome.
Right.
I mean, yes, you want the listing, that's the goal, but there is some value in knowing the neighborhood.
You made me think of Ricky Carruth, who's a great coach. And he talks about, when you're calling for sell by owners, he goes, try to help them. Right. And I would say, if I could go backwards and start over at the beginning of this, I would say your goal, whether you're making money or not on any of these deals, is to try to help that client achieve their goal. And so if you can come at it with that mentality and that emotional intelligence and that servant spirit, you're going to go so far in this business. So make sure you are serving them. Make sure you're looking for ways to help them. And that's ultimately going to lead you where you want to go, because if they can see that you're trying to help them, they're going to use you. Okay. Buyer objections. People we run into at open houses. We're already working with an agent, and that's one that comes up.
Where are they?
Yeah, why aren't they with you? Which I think, and I might get in trouble for this one too, because a lot of people will say you need to ask when buyers come in the door, you need to ask them if they're working with an agent, because if you start showing them houses, that's an ethics violation. Or if you start to give them information about property, that's an ethics violation. But the conundrum, though, is if you ask people if they're working with an agent right out of the gate, what are they going to say?
They're going to say they are.
That's right.
That's an objection.
Look, and this is the part where I'm going to get in trouble for. I don't ask, right? I assume that they're not unless they tell me differently. If they tell me differently, fine, right? I'll back off. And let's say I show them a couple of houses and there's a buyer's agent agreement that they have signed in place. I'm going to respect that.
Yeah.
They probably should have mentioned that to me. But in most cases, though, to me, it's not worth the risk of not getting a client by just asking them that question and giving them opportunity to exit out of the scenario.
Yeah.
The other objection is we're just looking right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's common in so many industries. You know, when you go to a car lot on a Sunday or Saturday and you're like, hey, I'm just looking. Yeah. A lot of people just go to car lots on Saturdays and Sundays and just look. You know, look,
Right.
Seems
Right.
fun. Probably not just looking. Although they may be further out than you want them to be. But there is some intention there, and it is worth having a conversation with them. It is worth getting them in your pipeline so that you are able to follow up appropriately.
Yeah.
Maybe they're 6 months out, maybe they're 12 months out, but they're looking for a reason.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, you know, when someone says that, when they say, okay, they come in, they go, we're just looking, you know, again, I'm wondering, you know, in that conversation, and there's so much nuance to this, because I don't know, if you're coming on too strong, they might be backing off.
Yeah.
Right. My approach in an open house is going to be like, hey, you guys come just take a look around. Let me know if you have any questions. Go take a look at the master bath. They just remodeled it. Let me know what you think, because I'd love to get some feedback on it.
Yeah, give them some homework.
Right. And then when they come back to me, I'm going to start an organic conversation with them about, hey, yeah, they like the master bathroom. Yeah, the great remodel, great. What are you guys looking for? And they're like, well, we're just looking for, we're not really, you know, in serious to buy a house. I'm like, oh, great. Yeah. Where do you guys live now? So I'm just trying to start a conversation with them to build rapport and trust.
Yeah. You're basically trying to find out time and intention, but without being pushy.
Right.
And you're not doing that in that one conversation. You're going to try to find it out over a longer period of time.
Right. So I almost want to say, if they come at it and they say, we're just looking right now, then you might be asking the wrong questions or coming on too strong. You want to put is again, it's kind of like when you walk in the mall, right? And you go into a store and they go, can we help you find anything? And I say, just looking. Right. But if they said, hey, come on, take a look around. Let me know if I can help you find anything. By the way, just so you know, there's a sale on, you know, this pair of pants.
Yep.
And you go, okay, great. So yeah, I think you might need to alter your approach. Okay. We need to sell our house first. They're like, oh, we're not even, we haven't even put our house on the market. We're not selling our house for 6 months. One of the things that I used to do is I'd say, oh, that's no problem at all. Is there any way I could maybe come by and take a look at your house and see if I might have a buyer for it? Not any rush, but maybe sometime in the future. And that, if I had built enough rapport and trust, I got a lot of appointments and listings that way from open houses. Where I'd be like, yeah, there's a potential that I might. So I'd treat it like it was a for sale by owner. I was like, well, I might have somebody for it. Sometimes I did have someone for it.
Yeah.
So I think that's, if you're working as a professional realtor, you're going to have clients that are waiting for right properties to come up. So there's absolutely cause to go to look at someone's house.
Yeah. You might want to flip that one too into, oh, so you're just doing some market research. Well, let me tell you about this one that's on the market over here, and this one's on the market over here.
Yeah.
And that way they know, hey, this person knows the market. They may be a good candidate to list our house if they are serious.
Mm-hmm. You know, if somebody comes at you with, hey, it's like our credit's not ready and we don't have enough cash to put down, things like that. Those are get in touch with lender questions. And what I typically do in those situations is I say, hey, look, you may not be ready right now, but my first call would be to talk to a lender so they can tell you what you need to do to get ready.
Yeah. You might be surprised at the programs that are available, things like that, because down payment assistance and stuff like that is out there. There's a lot of banks that take advantage of it. People don't know about it. So it's definitely a get in touch with a lender kind of question.
Would you share your story from this past weekend? Because we had that situation where a client was like, we're not in the market anymore. This thing happened, whatever.
Yeah. So my wife's an agent. She had some clients that she was working with for about 12 months, very qualified buyers. The spouse was actually in the same field as my wife that was previously, and so they kind of hit it off that way. And we had been working together for a while. And my wife sent him a house, right before the Easter weekend, and they were like, we're out of the market. My wife lost her job. They kind of downsized, so
right.
we're out, and she's gonna start her own practice, and so we've got to hit the reset button. Mm-hmm. My wife really pushed her to talk to me because I was the lender on the deal. And they were like, I'm telling you, we're out. She lost her job. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
There's no way we'll qualify. Well, she kept pushing, and they reached out to me, and sure enough, they not only qualified, but like it wasn't even close. Like they had plenty of room left, and they were surprised and like, oh, well, we will go see the house. So went to see the house, and they're under contract. So you just never know. Like people make all these assumptions about lending, about programs available, about what credit you need, about what how much down payment, all this stuff. And it's best to just talk to someone. If you're interested in buying or selling, and you're going down that path, just talk to a professional.
Well, it's just I think of it like a doctor, right? You shouldn't self-diagnose.
Yeah.
So what doctors say, do not self-diagnose. Yeah. Don't go to Google and type in your symptoms, right? Don't self-diagnose your financial situation, your financial ability to buy a house. It's always good to talk to a professional so they can give you some feedback, and they're going to put you on a plan or give you some tips so that you can be in a position when the time is right.
But that works as an agent too. Don't make assumptions about what people can or can't do. Push them to a lender.
Yeah.
Because you are not responsible for keeping track of all the programs that are out there, all the changes that are made in lending. Just push them to a professional. Don't just assume that what they say is accurate.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Okay, so if I'm going to recap this episode, and I know we were kind of, again, it was conversational, right? We're talking about different approaches, but the things that are important to remember here is you're going to find a rhythm in your handling of objections over time. You're going to fail, and that's going to give you the ability for your brain to work on that solution and come up with the right answers to that objection. So you need to do the work, right? So you can develop strength in objection handling. Right. So these things are, we've kind of given you some tips on that, but really the real strength from handling objections is going to come from your practice.
That's right.
Of making calls. So that's one thing that I want you to take with you as, in our recap.
It's going to seem very labor intensive for a while.
Yeah.
And then the better you get at it, or the more you experience, the easier it flows. And you don't want it to be like where someone comes up with an objection and you're working really, really hard to figure out what to say. It just needs to flow, and that just takes time.
Right. And the second thing that I want you to take with you is you need to get face-to-face with the potential client, right, on these appointments. The goal is not to win them over the phone. The goal is to get an appointment, and the appointment is going to how you build rapport and trust and are going to convert them to a client. So don't try to convert them over the phone. Agree with them on the phone so that you get to the appointment, and then you can see the real scenario and the real person on the other side.
Yep.
All right. Do us a favor, please. Like this episode, whether it's on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Like, subscribe. We would love, please give us a rating. Tell us how we're doing, and put something in the comments as well. We'd love to hear what you guys are challenged with out there in the marketplace so that we can serve you better. So anything else you want to say?
Yeah, no, we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube, so thanks for the support. And there's still a lot of you that listen that regularly that are not subscribers. So do us a favor and subscribe. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I do want to say about that real quick. You can edit this out later if you think you need to. We were really happy to hit 100 subscribers. Now, in the world of YouTube, 100 subscribers is not much. Okay. It's kind of like, those are baby numbers. And I get that. But what it represents though is consistency over time and celebrating those small victories on the way. So you need to be doing that as a real estate agent. It's like consistency, right? Do the right things over time. And those things are representative of, they're like little achievements on your way. Your first listing, your first contract. Those are big deals because if you can do it once, you can do it again and again and again. So it's a celebration of consistency and effort, so on and so forth. Yeah. So I want you to do that too in your life and in your career, is to be consistent and celebrate the small victories because they're representative of bigger things.
Yeah. And they say this about YouTube. It applies to real estate too. It's harder to go from 0 to 100 than it is from 100 to 500 or 500 to 1,000. So that first block of time that you spend working on your real estate career, trying to get into a rhythm, being consistent, that's the most difficult time. Once you get into that rhythm and you're there and you understand what needs to be done on a daily basis, it gets easier and easier. So
absolutely.
Just keep that in mind.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.